Christmas Eve, coming into Christmas Day, a horsey woman, Horsy, or is it SCY? I'm not too sure. There was a video I made a while back there, and it was coming up when I was running for the election. I explained what I did for a living, and I was in the Garda Síochána. I was a detective sergeant for the last part of my service. I'll be 20 years retired in March of this year. I'm gone a long time. And I worked in another job after I left as a project manager, and I retired to farming. And then I got into all this stuff of helping people with problems and all that. And so I do a bit of that, especially planning, and I'm good at law. But anyway, one of the smart fellows there underneath, I'd say he was being a wee bit smart about it, I'm not too sure. He wanted to put me on the spot, and he asked me, did I ever catch anyone for drunk driving? Now, in my early days of uniform guard, I would have been involved in accidents and things, but that's a long, long time ago. But I was in Cavan, a detective sergeant, and there was an outbreak of, I think it was the foot and mouth. Now, someone watching, do you know what? I haven't the mojo over Christmas Eve to look at the date. There was CJD and there was foot and mouth, but one of the big things was the border was sealed tight, and the cattle were taking to a pound south of Cavan town, and a lot of the farmers didn't like it. Cattle that were rambling across the border, and maybe a man have land in both jurisdictions, were seized, and there was terrible trouble over this. But anyway, farmers would be after these people, apartment people, with pitchforks, and the guards were needed. But when the outbreak of foot and mouth happened, they put a checkpoint at Leggy on the border, north of Cavan town. And if you just to show it to you here, like this is Cavan is down here, we'll say. Now I have a bad thumb, folks understand, I hurt my thumb. Cavan is down here, and you drive up, and the Leggy was here, crossroads, and then you go on over, and there's concession roads. So that road could take you into Fermanagh and any part up to Irvinstown or all that, and in Enniskillen, Listonskee, and then you can go into Tyrone, 5 Mile Town, Clogher and Otter, or you could go straight on into Monaghan, or you could go on to Armagh through Monaghan. You could go up to Auchnacolley, and you could go to Ballybay even that way. Well, you mightn't so much go to Ballybay because you'd probably go up by Coothill, but for the rest of them, there was a huge hinterland there. Any event, there was an equestrian centre open in Cavan. It's there yet, a big equestrian centre, and they used to have all kinds of events. But they had a horse sales in it. They'd have sales, like auctions. You'd show your horse, and maybe if you had someone to ride the pony round and show him off, you'd put him up for auction, and you could sell. So there was a woman, a good lump of a woman. She had a Mitsubishi Jeep and a horse box on her own. She was married and had a family, but the thing about it was she went down and she had a few horses, and she was, as to say, she was a horsey one. That's the way they say it in Ireland, you know. Doesn't really mean you could have horses, be born on a farm with horses, but it's also this idea that any woman that's into horses is always a bit rough and ready, which is not necessarily true, of course. But anyway, the checkpoint was here, and my job was we were trained, there was a few guards, particularly sergeants, trained what to do if there was any meat or animals seized. So the ordinary guards would check the cars and check for animals and check for meat, sausages, raw meat, anything, dog food, or even meat that was being killed for cattle. They didn't want any bovine or sheep meat or pig meat coming into the state from the north, because the north was connected with the UK, and the outbreak was in the UK over in England, and so there was a fear that there wouldn't be proper checks. Now it has to be said the northern authorities, veterinary people, did have checks. There was, but we were doubly safe, and there was 37 million pounds Irish we weren't in the euro allocated and we were all out to grab a bit of it. And there was a bit of overtime and everything. So things were slack. And when you get an outbreak of something, some serious thing like that, generally crime goes down because people won't come out and do crime because there's guards everywhere, and there's this concern, and everyone's putting their shoulder to the wheel. One of the easy things about it was you had terrific public support. Everybody was backing you. They didn't want this in, and it was all over the media. They wanted to keep this out, and every farmer was trying to help, like, really. So it wasn't too difficult. And in all fairness, I think there was a few cattle seized on the border, but they were rambling across more. All I think there was ever seized at this checkpoint was a pound of sausages, as far as I can remember. Someone bringing it in from Inniskill. So anyway, my job was to bring out the batteries for the torches and to bring out the food. There was some place doing food. It'd be always a fry up. And I never like fries. I don't eat fries. If I cooked a fry myself once a week, that's about it. But I wouldn't eat it as an Irish breakfast. And sometimes there'd be all the swimming in gravy, and they'd put beans, baked beans, and the gravy be mixing with the sauce on the beans, and I didn't like that. And they were getting 3 sausages, and then there was some cutback in the place that was supplying it, and they reduced the sausages to 2.5, and the guards was going on strike. They were going to go on strike because the sausages was cut down to 2.5. I wouldn't eat the dirty yolks at all. I mean, I might nibble at a wee bit of the rasher. I'd eat black pudding or white pudding. The one thing I'll eat in pig meat is white or black pudding. I like black pudding, white pudding, but that's it. I'm not gone on the rest of it. If I got a nice smoky rasher, I might eat it on a bit of sandwich. Sausages that want to be good ones, and usually the sausages you get in chippers are not good. They're full of old grizzle. So I wasn't too happy with that, but I was a picker. I'm a picker anyway, and still am. But it doesn't do me any harm because I'm getting on all right on the food I eat. A lot of people eat old grazy food. I wouldn't eat it anyway. But anyway, I had to bring out the food. So you had to bring out the food, and you had to bring back the plates from the previous meal, and you had to wear gloves because there's a thing called wheels disease. Rats could be in the ditch, and if rats got into cuts on your hands and you got wheels disease, it's a very, very dangerous illness. So that was a careful thing. So big alert on this. But my job was, one, to be there to back up the ordinary guards. If anybody came along and wasn't cooperative or was trying to drive on, we'd soon stop them. We're fully armed with machine guns and revolvers and everything. We're loaded full. We're loaded to the hilt. And the detective branch carry guns in the guards, but the uniform guards don't. And so that was the job. But there was very little of that. In reality, it was bring the food out, bring out the batteries, exchange. Some fellow wanted to go back into the toilet, like you might bring him in, or you bring him out, or bring some temporary relief or whatever, and that was it. So it was handy enough like that. But anyway, it so happened this sale was going on probably Friday evening, and it was coming maybe dark. It was good and dark. And I came out anyway with the stuff, with the food and all, but there had come a call across about a lady driving a Mitsubishi Jeep and a horse trailer. So what happened is she had two female horses, and one was a really good one, and the other was good enough too, and she was going to sell them. She was probably could do it a few bob. So the good one went up first and got a great price. There was a great bit of bidding. And she got much more than she expected. She was the kind of a one, and this was great news. And she'd be talking, maybe, I don't know, was there mobile phones at them? There might be, but she'd be on the phone home anyway. But she was unaccompanied this time for some reason. But anyway, the thing is, the second horse went in, but she didn't sell him. The price for the second filly horse, sell her, was not that good, and she decided she wouldn't sell. And she wasn't too pushed anyway. She was happy enough. She got a good price for one. That'd pay a few bills, and if she brought the other one home, sure, she could bring her back again or breed from her or something else. So anyway, in the Equestrian Centre was a food outlet that did chips and meals and burgers, good food. Like a catering crowd had taken over for profit, and there was also a pub. And she went in anyway to have a bit of grub, and just some of the people that bought the horses knew her, and there was a fierce chat about the horses and talking about horses and breeding and different breeds and everything, and just the way I talk about cattle, I suppose, the same thing, and chatting away anyway. And just someone suggested she could take a wee half one, take a wee drink there now, a wee whiskey or something. And she wasn't going to now, she was driving, but she'll be a while you're going home anyway. But to be the jigs and the reels, she had more half ones of whiskey than she should have had. She had a few, or gins and tonics, don't ask me. They bought her a few, and she looked like all right, and she got a bit merry, and she wasn't used to drinking, and there was good company, and a lot of lads there. There was in the horsey trade, and she met a few people she never met before, and all of that, and telling them up her way the way it was and what it was like down in Westmeath and the horses, and down in maybe Roscommon, someone had a horse down there, and there was a horse won a race, and the usual old crack was going on and all that. I don't know what, but I know I was in it a few times, and be plenty of talk, plenty of noise, and plenty of rumble bumble and all the rest, and a bit of grub. And if you were in there and wanted to get a bit to eat, you get a nice burger and chips there, good enough, and plenty of brown sauce on it there, and a bit of vinegar, and a drop of tea, and a lump of a loaf. So anyway, we were here anyway. But didn't she come out when she was coming home? She came out about 7:30 or maybe 8 o'clock, and when she was coming out, didn't the edge of the transport box catch another vehicle, I think it was a Jeep, and it scratched it damaged it. And whether she knew it or not, I don't know, but she decided to say nothing and go on. But what she didn't know was there was a youngster sitting in the Jeep waiting on someone to come, and the youngster alerted the owner and got a bit of the number and the description of the trailer and all, and the guards was told, and the word went out into Cavan Town, and Cavan Town sent out a radio message to be on the lookout for this vehicle, and that it had a horse box with a horse in it, and it had done damage to a car in Cavan. A hit and run, essentially. So by the time I arrived out, there was a good lump of a Dublin guard there with a broad accent on him, a good broad accent, the old Dublin accent, and he had settled in the area, but he was there anyway, and another guard as well, and he got the word about the Jeep coming, and I was just there and had the grub all ready and getting the batteries. The batteries would wear out on the flashing lamps, you see, for safety, and I was putting in them and all. That was grand, and I was getting overtime. Once I went over the 8 hours, there was a bit of overtime and a bit of subsistence allowance and all that, so there was money to be made and creeping up, because it was handy. It wasn't that hard of work, you didn't have to plough through bogs or anything like that. So, or you didn't have to arrest anyone. Usually it was just get the time in, and that was it. So anyway, the next thing is, didn't the Jeep come up with a horse box, and your man seen it, the guard, and he stopped her. So she knew, whether she knew she hit the thing or not, she knew she could be in bother. He says, "What's your name?" he says to her. "I'm Margaret," such a thing. She gave her second name. They call me Maggie, and Maggie. See, so that. He looked at her, and he could see she looked to have a few drinks. So he assembled the alkalizer. You see, a thing you blow into like this, and a bag on the end of it, like my cap. Yeah. Well, under such an act, you have to blow into this, and she had to blow, so she blew up. And he took it down, and he looked at it, and sure, it was on fire. She was twice over the legal limit. There was no doubt in the guard's mind he was going to have to arrest her and bring her in, and she'd be charged and all the rest of it, lose her license probably and all that. And it was serious business, but there was nothing. She wasn't getting out of this one too easy. But he was a bit droll in the way he talked, and he says, "Well, Maggie, you had a few stiff ones in you tonight." And Maggie looked up to him. "Oh," she says, "oh, guard, does it tell you that as well?" See you back.